building an indie business in the center of venture capital. I am Alex Edmonds. People on the internet call me SupremeRumHam, and this is the Building an Indie Business podcast. Alright, so today I'm going to be talking about the podcast production, post-production mostly. I realized that my process for the podcast has changed a lot, and I want to go over it. Alright, so we're going to be going through every task that I do for the podcast to produce it, like what I do on Fridays after I record the podcast. Alright, so let's get into it. So first of all, the first thing that I do is I create an outline, and I mostly do this in Simple Note. I have an idea of what I want to say, and I just keep it. I add the basic topic, and then I add like little details, right? So for any topic mostly, for the revenue research stuff, I go, okay, revenue ideas, revenue reducers, revenue, and then I just fill in those little things as I go for the week or whenever I'm writing the outline. So yeah, I do that in a Simple Note, and then it gets to Friday, and I record the podcast. So I record. I turn on the transcript first with Otter.ai, and then I hit record. Okay, and then after I finish recording, I go back to Otter.ai, and I hit stop on the transcript. I wait for that to load, and then I do audio to video for YouTube. So I upload the audio, and then I use headliner.app, I believe, and then I wait for that to process to turn into a video for YouTube. And then I go to Caproni.fm, which is my current podcast host. I do all the details, I make the show notes, I upload the audio, and that's for the podcast. It's how it gets in the RSS feed, right? And then I create a web page for the podcast episode. I create the web page. I put the show notes, put the title, and then I change the iframe because I use the Caproni.fm iframe so that people can go to the website and listen to the episode. So I have to change that every episode, because what I do is I just create I just create a copy of the previous episode, so I have to change everything. And then also, it's just easy changing. I do Control F, and then I highlight something, and then I do Control F. So like for the title, I highlight the previous title, Control F, and then I put in my new title, and that's how you change every title that I have for the episode. It's pretty easy. So I change the iframe, and then I change the archive. No, I add to the archive. So I have an archive of every episode that just links to every episode. So I add the new episode to that, and that way anyone who finds the podcast and wants to listen to previous episodes, it's just right there. And it's pretty funny because I do it in this order. The order of the new episodes mostly is the order in which I record it. So like, there could be a revenue research episode that's like the third bottom, and I just released that episode, but it's at the third bottom because, not the bottom, but like third from the top, because I just recorded that episode, right? So yeah. And then I do structured data, which is still on the web page. And what structured data is it's basically like if you were to Google how TikTok makes money, and my webpage would be the first thing. It'll pop out like little details about the webpage. This is on Google, right? So this is for SEO. It'll pop out like the link, little details about it, like the description that I've written and other things. So that's one of the tasks. Oh, it's not really a task so much because all I do is I change the title, I change the link. This used to be a task because the first time you do structured data, you have to highlight everything that you want to add to it. So it used to take me a couple of minutes. So I used to have to like put a lot of. It took me some time. It took me like 3 or 4 minutes, and so I added it to the list. But now I just do it on the web page. I realized that you didn't have to keep highlighting everything going to that. Yeah. So for the website that I used was structured data markup helper. So yeah, that's the next thing I do. And then I have an RSS feed. And the reason I have an RSS feed, it's just a text. I have the RSS feed because I wanted to add the podcast to Google News, and Google News lets you have a podcast, but then I have the text, and the text, really what the RSS feed does on Google News is it lets you click to the web page. So like if you are subscribed to the podcast on Google News, and you click on the story in quotes, it'll go directly to the BAIB website. So yeah, it's just a way to get more traffic to the website at this point. So yeah, I have to manually add the item to the RSS feed. I basically just copy and paste the old one, the previous episode, and then change the data. And yeah, that's how I have an RSS feed for the podcast. Then now I'm done with the web page. I add the audio to Patreon. Oh, the last thing I do is now I have the transcript from Otter, and then I've now been getting rid of the transcript page, and I have the transcript at the bottom, so I have to change that out too. So I take the transcript from Otter and I put it on the web page. So yeah, now I'm done with the web page. I've created it and added everything. So now I have the link, and of course, like I've run the change. I've deployed it from Firebase. So now I have the web page, and I need to promote the episode. I need to increase the SEO score, get my backlinks. And so the first thing I do is I add the audio to Patreon. So yeah, on Patreon, you're allowed to add audio files. And so I do that. So anyone on Patreon can listen to the episode. And this is just like let people have a preview of my content, right? So I create that page. I create that post. That post is what I meant to say. And then, yeah, I fill it out. I add the audio. I add the podcast cover. I take the text that I put in Caproni and I copy and paste it on Patreon. And then I do the little tags. And so, like for TikTok, it was how to build a new business, TikTok, revenue, finance, money. And so that way people on Patreon, when they're searching for those things, they might run into my podcast. Yeah. So getting listeners on Patreon. And then I tweet out the Patreon post. I say, hey. I don't say hey. I say I recorded an episode on Christmas trees or TikTok. Right? I posted it on Patreon. You can listen to it for free, and then a link to the Patreon post, right? And then I do Buy Me a Coffee. And the reason why I do Buy Me a Coffee, I create a post on Buy Me a Coffee, is because that'll give you a backlink. So I'm posting everything in that post. I do a link to revenue research. I do a link to the book. I do a link to the Discord community. And of course, I do a link to the podcast episode, right? So just all of my websites getting a backlink from Buy Me a Coffee. And then I post it to MakerLog. I post a task first. I say, recorded a podcast episode. And then I do created a page for the podcast episode with a link to the post. Not the post, the page, right? And that gives me a backlink. And then I request indexing on Google Search Console. And the reason why I request indexing is so that Google Search Console, or Google, will recognize the new page, and that way it will show up in search results faster. So like for the TikTok episode, if someone Googles how to make money with, or no, how TikTok makes money, if someone Googles that, my page might show up maybe next week or 2 weeks later, instead of it showing up 3 months later, because Google hasn't recognized my new page in the last 3 months, right? So it's just speeding up indexing, making sure that people find my page faster than they usually would. Okay. And the last thing I do is I create a newsletter letting my subscribers know that there's a new episode that's released. So I schedule it for the day it's released, not the day I create the episode. And then I have a link. I have all the show notes in the episode. So I say the title's like new BAIB episode with the title of the episode. And then I say in the little preview something like new episode this week, and then I do the little description, or like little show notes that I created on Caproni. It's like, in this episode I discuss TikTok and how they make money, blah blah blah. And then in the episode, no, in the email, I have a link to the episode, and then I have the show notes. I just copy and paste the show notes from Caproni. And then I have a listen now button at the end of the show notes. So yeah, you have 3 opportunities to click on the podcast episode, because at the very top I have new episode, and then I have a link in new episode. So if you click that, it'll go to the podcast page. Yeah, and then I have a link at the very top of the email when I just have the title of the episode, and then I have the listen now button. So yeah, I'm just linking people to content in the episode, and then in the email, sorry. And then, oh yeah, when all this is done, the YouTube video is now ready. So I put the video content on YouTube, and I schedule it for the day it's going to be released. Yeah. Okay. So that's now my podcast workflow. It's a little more complicated than, I think, December of 2020 in July of 2020 when I released the book and I created the podcast workflow document. Yeah. Oh, and then I use Email Octopus for the newsletter. So yeah, that's my podcast workflow. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. Bye.